What's up, everyone? Welcome to a very rare uThermal cast, but I just had to bring you guys these games. The Esports World Cup finished last week, and the games were absolutely fantastic. I think there's a good chance that we have seen the highest level Terran and Protoss gameplay ever. I am not quite sure about Zerg gameplay. I mean, if we're being honest, with how good Serral has been, the best player of all time, it's kind of hard for him to play even better than he has in the past. But for Terran and Protoss, Clem and Hero really showed some absolutely amazing games, and especially Clem stood out in this tournament as just an absolute freaking beast. I'm going to be showing you guys two games of his run, one against Hero, one against Serral. Now, let me sketch the situation here for you guys. This is a best of 7. This is in the semifinals of the Esports World Cup, the first ever $1 million StarCraft tournament. These players have won at least $80,000 at this point, but this one best of 7 is the difference between $80,000 and at least $150,000, with the chance of winning $400,000, which is by a pretty decent margin the biggest prize a StarCraft player would have ever won. I think up until now, some of the BlizzCon finals at 280k. I remember when Serral, Rogue, and I believe Dark won. That was the highest prize pool before now, where the tournaments had about a 700k total prize pool with a first place of 280k. But I feel like this match is really extremely cool, because there are typically a couple of main suspects that you would like or would expect to see in these semifinals. Obviously, Serral is one of them. He was actually in the other semifinals. At this point, he had already beaten Dark 4-0 in an honestly pretty uneventful series, so Serral was already waiting in the finals here. But for example, Serral Maro was a very expected grand finals, but Maro didn't actually make it here. Instead, we had Hero and Clem, who are really two fan favorites, especially for their super fun way to play the game in the semifinals. And I know in this video we're going to be giving a lot of praise to Clem, but I also want to give an absolutely massive shout out to Hero. If you guys did not see Hero's gameplay this tournament, it was freaking mesmerizing, really. And me, I feel like I haven't been impressed by the Protoss players a lot recently. I think the Protoss lineup took a couple of big hits when a lot of big-time pros went to the military. Zest, SOS come to mind. I think Trap as well, right? Who is also making a comeback now, by the way, so that could be cool. But Hero is here in the Esports World Cup. He had a military, I was going to say stint, but that kind of makes it sound like he wanted to go there. I'm not quite sure if he did, but he served his military service in South Korea, and now he's back, and he is 33 years old, which is admittedly very old for a StarCraft 2 pro gamer, but he is still playing the highest level gameplay of his entire career, and really perhaps the highest level gameplay of Protoss ever. So I really enjoy this game super much, and this game is going to be an absolute banger as well. Now, what's cool about this match in particular is that I would say that they both have pretty similar strengths. Like, these guys are both absolute micro beasts. They have insane killer instinct. If they have the chance to kill you, they absolutely will. I really think Clem and Hero might be your two least favorite players to play against when you feel a little weak. Like, I'm sure everyone that has played StarCraft at some point must have felt this way, where sometimes you just... It can't always be explained, but sometimes you just feel really solid, and sometimes you feel like your gameplay is full of holes, right? Now, I would never want to play against either of these guys if I feel like that. I feel like, in particular, Hero, as someone who... I don't really like playing against Protoss that much. TVP has been a bit of a weakness in Legacy of the Void for me. I would never want to like to play against Hero unless I have a really freaking good build, and even then it's going to be scary. But they're both super aggressive, very micro-talented beasts. For a while, their late game... Actually, they made a kind of similar evolution there. For a while, both of their late games wasn't really the greatest. I feel like Clem, he was known to be super good in TVZ with his attacks, Marine, Marauder, Widowmine, but in the late game, it wasn't that good. But he improved his late game an incredible amount, and Hero kind of was the same way. So here we go for a drop. Hero sent every unit into the main base to deal with this drop, but that was a little bit too greedy, because now Clem is going to get in here with his army. It does look like Hero is going to get a decent defense going here, but that was a little bit of that actually was a bit of a miss micro, but I was just praising him for his micro. Come on, Hero. Now, admittedly, that is kind of what a Hero does, okay? I'm still gonna keep praising Hero because he really is just the freaking greatest. Like, I absolutely love him, but that is just a typical Hero moment. Hero always looks like he's the best player ever, like he plays absolutely amazing, and all of a sudden he blinks 10 Stalkers into a bunch of Widowmines or something like that, and that was really not the best micro moment ever. So far, he lost 2 Stalkers Stalkers that he shouldn't have lost, I believe. And the decision to go into the main to send every single unit to that medevac might have been a bit questionable as well, because he left it natural open and now he lost 8 workers for it. Trying to pressure on the other side with 4 Stalkers. This is a move that I always want to see every single Protoss player make. 4 Stalkers against Terran can be so destructive. If you have a Warp Prism or if you just have Blink, if you get 4 Stalkers to a main base, you can easily one-shot like 10 workers or so here. Probably gonna need the Warp Prism because Clem has a tank already. And this, I really have to say, guys, this is a pretty sloppy early game from a hero here. And this is one thing, really, I can't believe, I'm just getting flabbergasted watching this. Like, he keeps rotating. You guys realize what he did there? Like, he just didn't blink his Stalker away from the tank and lost it, followed by an absolutely perfect target fire on that medevac returning back from home. Like, I feel like we're just going to be seeing that throughout this entire game, him switching between being an absolute brilliant genius and, you know, kind of just flunking with the blinks and stuff like that. But a Protoss player that's good with Stalkers and a Warp Prism can get so much done exactly like this. Like, this is a move that a player like Hero is extremely good at. Another player that I could think of is MaxPax, for example, the other best Protoss player in the world. And just like that, he kills 6 workers. Like, I know it doesn't seem like it's too dangerous, but 6 workers instantly is a big deal. Remember that Clem killed 8 workers earlier, looked like he was going to be ahead, and now all of a sudden Hero's up 9 workers again. And that is not going to put him in a good position yet. Keep in mind that losing workers earlier is always worse because it's a bigger percentage of your economy, right? So Clem at this point is still in a pretty good spot. His harassment is really good. Yet another small micro mistake by Hero. This must be so funny, you guys listening to me talk about Heroes the freaking greatest, and then I think we've already watched 4 or 5 micro mistakes at this point. Trust me, guys, this game is going to be a banger because Hero is just freaking amazing. And before the action started, that's what I actually wanted to say. One thing that really impressed me about Hero in this tournament is that for a while now, I feel like I've seen Protoss players really struggle with adding value to their units in the mid-game. So what I mean by that is, like, you would see, for example, 4-gate Blink, very common against Terran. It could pop off and do a lot of damage, but the moment that the time of those Stalkers was over, they wouldn't really be able to turn a supply deficit into something. Like, this is a situation where I would expect most Protoss players to die because I haven't really seen them add value to their units here. But Hero, very consistently, and this is obviously not a good thing, but very consistently this tournament put him in tough spots against the absolute best players in the world, and he would still be able to make something of it. This is also an incredible Warp Prism save, using the Stalkers to just buy a little bit of time. These are already 3 Stalkers, and he still saved all of them and the Warp Prism. Just little moves like that are absolutely awesome. Now he has Chargels up here already. Keep in mind that Clem already stimmed his units, so they're low HP. And just like that, he survived incredibly easily against an attack that I'm certain would have crushed many a Protoss player. Now, I did notice one thing, by the way, is that Hero did get supply blocked a decent amount in these games. Right now, he was supply blocked at 109. And I think that adds even more to the entire dynamic of Hero that I've been explaining so far, where he kind of switches between being an absolute genius and, you know, kind of flunking a little bit, because supply blocks are not really something you want to see at this level. Now, Clem here is doing something that I have struggled with a lot of my TVP, and I definitely admire that from him, is that he just has, and I find this incredibly hard to do against Protoss, he just has the perfect read on his TVP situations at all time. And this is just, I don't even know how you can really do that. Like, if you think about the tools that Protoss has that are quite strong, right? So first of all, Protoss has Warpins, which means that Defender's advantage against them is not as big. So if their army looks big, you kind of, like, if you were to play against Zerg, just imagine if they could reinforce with like an additional 60 Zerglings instantly or something like that, right? That's what you have to keep in mind against Protoss at all times. But yet, despite that, he always seems to be aware of exactly when he can move out and what is actually threatening and whatnot. And here, he put himself in a good spot by moving back. Like, if he fought into those Zealots, despite doing damage earlier, he might have actually been behind, but he just always falls back and I don't know how, but whenever I watch a Clem game, he always seems to be ahead at some point. And that is just crazy to me, because against Protoss, that is something I never managed to do. Personally, I always had like super killer timing attacks. Sometimes I would find a really cool build and manage to kill them in, you know, somewhere between 5 and 10 minutes or so. But Clem, he actually finds himself into a really good macro spot most of the time. Now, this attack seems threatening, but there's also a really big Zealot counterattack going on. He cancels the 4th base, but in the meantime, he has already lost about 10 workers at home. You can see that he is still managing to save those SCVs pretty well, but Zealot counterattacks like this are pretty hard to deal with because Marauders from the barracks don't actually deal with it that well. So you can tell he had to run his SCVs around for a while. Hero is trying to do his best to, you know, create some force fields here. I think he has sniped one of the... That Zealot actually killed the last tank there, which is an absolutely massive moment. And somehow, despite the hero sending what I believe was about 12 Zealots into Clem's base, they have killed a... I'm gonna carefully say, somewhat similar amount of workers. Now, it is 19 against 20, but keep in mind that Clem was ahead before. And this is the kind of move that I was talking about. This move didn't even really seem that bad for Clem. He was... Okay, that does seem a little tough, losing that medevac there, but that move didn't seem bad for Clem. He got ahead. He got more ahead by forcing Hero to warp in a lot of Zealots and then backing off at the perfect time. Then he hits with a really good timing attack. Hero sends 12 Zealots into Clem's base, which should mean that Clem's army is way bigger. But somehow Hero finds himself completely back into the game. And that is what's so impressive about Hero. Like, I really mean it, guys. You can watch a lot of Clem's games. I watched a lot of Hero Marine games that look like that as well. They get ahead from the early game, even against really good Protoss players. Like, let's say in Europe, you could have like the Showtimes and maybe a slight level below where like Harsims and Christianers and stuff, where they would just die when they get like a little bit behind. These are really good Protoss players, but Hero somehow always finds his way back, and that is incredibly cool. And what I want to see now is how Clem finds his way back into this game. Because this is a situation that Terrans struggle with a lot against Protoss right now. There's a new Protoss meta, which is basically not taking that many gases. Hero has already taken more gases than normal. This Raven has 11 kills, by the way. This Raven chilling in this corner. It's never a highlight-worthy moment because it just drops an auto turret, but this Raven has dropped probably like 6 auto turrets at this point. They killed freaking 11 workers already, which is crazy. Now, Hero has taken a couple more gases than you normally would with this style that I was about to mention. But a very scary style from Protoss, and a style that I personally never want to play against because that is so freaking annoying to deal with, is they only make... I believe the standard is 4 gases now. They'll go up to Colossus and Blinkstalkers very fast. Colossus create this kind of death zone, like a meter in front of them, where you don't want to walk unless you're really gonna take the fight. You kind of forced to make Ghost and Vikings to deal with the Colossus composition, because just Marines and Marauders are just not that good against Colossus at all. And then, by not taking that many gases, you create a bigger economy. You can go up to like 80, even 90 workers. You make 25 gateways, literally. And then you can just warp in mass Zealots, while the Terran is kind of stuck on having this high-tech army that is not really that good against mass Zealots. And that is what should, at this point, be really scary for Clem. If you look at the minimap, you can see that the hero has not taken a gas on his 4th base either. And if I remember correctly, he didn't actually... Okay, he did saturate it now. He didn't have this gas saturated before. How many robos do we have? We have 2 robos and 8 gateways. So for now, even though if you look at the supplies, you could think, okay, you know, Protoss got to that scary position. This is not where Clem wants to be, but Hero is missing 17 gateways compared to the complete style that I just mentioned before, right? That is... Yeah, that is a hero blink that I was talking about, guys. I think he blinked for the Vikings. He thought they were exposed, but this is Clem we're talking against. The Vikings are rarely ever exposed, and they killed like 5 Stalkers or so. And this is where playing against Clem is going to be incredibly frustrating. In fact, I feel like playing against both of these in this exact situation is really annoying, because Hero is super good at taking the fights that he wants. Like, you could tell that he actually managed to escape there very well after doing that horrible blink. But then at the same time, Clem just never seems to lose freaking units to Disruptors. Like, Disruptor is known as one of the absolute best, you know, units in the entire PvT matchup. I think most low-level Terrans struggle with it. Most pro-level Terrans really struggle with it because it's just so freaking hard. But Clem, he doesn't. And that is really comparing it to other high-level... Not me, right? I'm washed up, let's be honest. But comparing him to other high-level pro Terrans like Cure and stuff, they're going to take a lot of Disruptor hits over the course of a big game. Like, I mean, how many Novas are going to be fired if you play Mass Disruptor? Maybe like 100 in a game or something? Obviously, you're going to get hit by that pretty badly at some point, right? But Clem, I have seen him take some hits in the past, but with Clem, there's an entirely different vibe. Like, normally with Terran, you know, as a main Terran player, if you see someone get hit by a fat Disruptor hit, it's kind of a frustrating moment. You're like, freaking Disruptors, man. But when Clem gets hit, it's almost like you have to celebrate it. Like, it only happens once a year, you know? Like, it's Christmas. Like, you have to cherish that freaking moment right there. Now, so far, I would say that with everything that's happened, we are in a relatively even spot. I do think Hero's production is slightly worrying. His army is really good here, but his lack of production is a little bit worrying. Look at those Disruptor shots. That one got a ghost. That's probably the best hits he's gonna get in a while. That one maybe killed a couple of Marauders, but keep it... Oh, that was not the best control than the Disruptor shot there by Hero. But keep in mind that he is going to be losing Disruptors for this every single time. For some reason, I can't remember exactly how much a Disruptor costs, but I think it would be fair to compare it to about a Ghost. So if a Disruptor kills one Ghost and then dies, that is going to be a pretty even trade. I do think that the Disruptor is... This sounds kind of crazy. I'm not quite sure. I might fall back on this later, but I think a Disruptor might be more important to the Protoss army than one Ghost is to the Terran army, because the Ghost, they don't really add a consistent amount of damage or output or threat to the army. It's mostly you EMP the army once. If you're fighting in a battery overcharge, for example, then you're gonna have to EMP it a couple times if you want to fight it and you can't snipe the battery. But for the most part, you EMP once, and that's gonna be it for the Ghost. Like, the damage is only decent against Zealots, but against Stalkers, Colossus, Immortals, it doesn't really do a whole lot. But the Disruptor is actually ultra important. Look at his target fire by Clem, by the way, making sure to keep his Marauders on the side of the Stalker so he can't kill the Vikings and Medivacs for free. Here he's gonna go on sniping a couple more Stalkers, always gonna try to make the best out of his units. But as long as you have Disruptors, the Terran can never stim into you fully, and that's what's so important. Let's see. Dude, I finally thought we were gonna get a big hit, but in the end it was still just one Marauder for... oh, there we go. 2 Marauders. Let's freaking go, Hero. What a big Disruptor hit. But you want to make sure that a Terran can't just concave its stim into you instantly. The Protoss army is really good at dealing damage over time, like a Colossus swipe here and there. You warp Zealots in the back with a Terran base so they're distracted, blah, blah, blah. If they can just stim on top of you at once, no fur for Disruptors, or for example, Storms, they could also be a key spell there to use. Then the fight becomes... I'm not kidding. Like, I've seen this in a lot of games and I've experienced it firsthand. The fight becomes like 3 times easier instantly. As long as there's even just 1 or 2 Disruptor Novas up, you always have to worry about it. Like, you can never be in a full ball. You always have to run away. And keep in mind that you have to stim your army every time as well. So if you play against Disruptors, check this out. A couple of Medivacs are going to snipe this game, but Clem still has 9. Well, now he has 8. But typically... the recommended amount for a big Terran army in Medivacs is going to be 4 to 8, but Clem knows that he's going to have to keep stimming over and over, so he just needs more Medivacs, which reduces the, you know, overall quality of his army, because he could also have, I don't know, a couple of Liberators instead. He could have spent the gas on there, but instead he had to make more Medivacs. Like, notice how there is still no Liberators out there. I do have to say, Clem most likely inspired a lot of Terrans to go out on the ladder and try to play this active style against Protoss. Just a warning, if you get absolutely annihilated, don't blame Clem, okay? Look, did you guys see that Medivac pickup in the bottom left? That is insane. And now he's gonna get on top of the Disruptors. This is so close. Pretty good splits, but he did take 1 little hit to the face. Is it going to be enough? I'm not sure. Hero really well done to save just 1 more volley from the Disruptor Novas, and this fight is gonna go incredibly even. I don't like that Hero's chasing here, guys. He needs to be so careful. Like, every 5 Marauders that join up the fight is gonna make this a lot more difficult. He's gonna snipe that Disruptor as well. And I'm not sure. I mean, it was a pretty even trade, but I'm actually going to slightly favor Clem here. And the reason why... look at the Medivac count. It is still 8, and he still has 4 Ghosts. 4 Ghosts is roughly the amount you want against Protoss. Once again, it's not like Ghost against Zerg, where you need more Ghosts, so you have more snipes. You just want to EMP the army. That's pretty much what you want to do. So Clem kept all of his high-value units alive. He has all 8 Medivacs, and he still has 4 Ghosts. He still has the 1 Raven, so Hero effectively traded. I think it was... it could have been 3, but I think it was 2 Colossus, a couple of Disruptors, 1 Immortal against just the bio, not counting the Ghost. So in the end, that was not going to be a good trade for Hero. And keep in mind what I mentioned before, guys. Hero does have 11 gateways now, but he does not have the 25 that you would usually see with this style. A little bit of an characteristic mistake there by Clem, losing that one ghost, but obviously not the biggest deal considering we're already 19 minutes and 30 seconds deep into this game. Now, one thing that I'm taking from Clemmer that I should do, I really don't know why there are ghosts in these meta. I was just going to say, one thing that I was going to take from Clem is that he always seems to harass with a small squad. It doesn't seem like Clem does big harassments against Protoss, right? Like, it's typically either one medevac and sometimes two medevacs worth of bio. Now, what does puzzle me is that he puts ghost in there. So either he really wants the ghost in there or he just doesn't think it's, you know, it matters that much, so he just boxes whatever that is. Now, I did notice that he lost he's actually making a lot of ghosts now, huh? He has 7, and he's making 5 more. I wonder if these 5 more are going to be in response to this base rate, because he knows he'll need ghosts at home. Now, initially, this base rate looks really good for the Protoss. I mean, if you look at the supply, this seems like it's really good for the Protoss, right? But the thing is, the army quality of Clem is really, really good. And once you enter a base trade, once again, Hero does not have a lot of gateway. If he could spend those 2,000 minerals warping 20 zealots now, I'd be a big fan. But Hero is actually going to be remaxing quite slowly. And Clem's army is significantly better at this point. His army supply is just a little bit higher. But he did keep all of the... Did he lose? Yeah, he finally lost a couple medevacs. But he did keep most of his high-value units alive. And I also think that Disruptors... Dude, how many kills does this Raven have? 24? This Raven has 25 kills, guys. That's actually insane value for a Raven. If I got 5 worker kills on a Raven, I'd be pretty happy. That Raven has freaking 25 kills. But yeah, to come back to the point, Hero cannot reinforce instantly. He's going to reinforce slowly. Clem is going to get an even bigger army. I don't think he's going to be making that many more SCVs. And Disruptors are not that good on a big spread out army situation. Like, notice how the Hero is going to be struggling here to split his Disruptors. Right now, the only army he has on the top side is 7 Disruptors, I believe, and that's it. But Clem is going to be able to dodge all of them. And the moment there are no... amazing split once again. At the moment there are no Novas left, he can stim on top of those and kill all of the Disruptors. You can see on the minimap that a big part of Hero's army is in the bottom, and there we go. He already sniped 2 Disruptors instantly. Amazing killer instinct there to actually just freaking go for that, because sniping Disruptors like that is freaking scary. And now Clem is up by 50 supply. And I was really, really surprised by this, but somehow that base rate ended up being so good for Clem. And here we go. He's going to try to snipe every single Disruptor, but the last Disruptor goes off. He was about to wipe house there, but instead the last Disruptor is a little bit of a saving grace for a Hero there. But if we look at the economy, guys, especially after losing this base, the economy is not going to be very good for Hero at all. And I really am surprised that it ended up well for Hero. Or really well for Clem, rather. These days, base trades are pretty much always favorable for Protoss against Terran, like especially in the tools that they have. Well, I don't think Hero has a Dark Shrine. Normally, they have Dark Templars, and they have a bunch of Disruptors, which is just extremely good in base trades. You can get on the top of the Terran production, make sure they never make units again, and in the meantime, you can just keep warping in at any pylon you have with power. But here, Clem just did it perfectly. I feel like he did just enough damage on the other side of the map, kept just enough strong units alive so that his army was going to stay strong. And his economy, in the end, I would say was pretty decent. He has, let's see, he has 4 orbitals here and 51 SCVs, and mules about 3 SCVs. So right now his economy is about 65 workers. I think at the end of the base rate it was going to be more 60 or 55, but that is really not bad. Hero, on the other hand, he had 75 workers, but Clem killed 2 of his most important bases, so he wasn't going to be able to mine from any base with those. I do have to say, really clutch move by Hero here to take that base in the top right and actually recall workers there. Sadly, he did remove a bit of the clutchness of that moment by warping in Stalkers on that side. Now, there are Disruptors over here, but so far, I think we've seen Clem lose an average of 2.5 Marauders to, 35... Well, I was going to say 35 Disruptor shots, but it's probably been way more, like 120 Disruptor shots or so. Clem microing on both sides, as he usually does. The Marauders here are going to be barely enough to clean his army up, maybe not with the 4 Zealots coming in, but this army is still up on the other side, and Clem is going to take this game against Hero. And Clem, in the end, even though this was a very competitive game, Clem ends up taking this series 4-0, an absolutely legendary tier victory against the best Protoss player in the world. Next up, the grand finals against Serral. Clem and Serral meet in the finals of the Esports World Cup, the biggest finals ever to be played in any RTS game, by the way. $550,000 on the line, 400k for the winner, and 150k for second. Now, I found out that it might actually be 600k instead, because this tournament also offers an MVP award, which is another 50k dollars that is most likely going to go to the winner, unless they're going to give it to like the Terran Savior or something like that, right? But this could very well be a $600,000 RTS finals. I genuinely didn't think there would ever be a time that I would say something like that, because that sounds freaking crazy, right? Now, this series is a best of 9. And at this point, Clem was 1-0 up. I believe the first game of this series was relatively uneventful. It was actually kind of an uncharacteristically poor executed build by Serral. I think he tried to do... You know what he did? He did something that I sometimes do in my challenges, where he was going to go for like a cool roach all-in with the Korean drop. That is not my build. That is just not too confused. That's just a really cool Zerg build that Eric actually invented at some point, a Brazilian Zerg. But I think he forgot roach speed or something, so it was a pretty tough start. And yeah, I mean, if you get behind against Clem, I've talked about it a bunch in the first game, then you just get absolutely crushed like an ant. So that is kind of what happened as well. But now we're playing on Golden Aura. The last map was Crimson Court, which I believe is a map that's considered to be better for Terran. And now we're playing on Golden Aura, which is a map that's considered to be better for Zerg. And these are some of the games that Clem is probably the most known for, because Clem initially got really known for his TVZ. Obviously, if you compete in the European region like Clem does, you need to be really good against Zerg to ever have a chance of winning a regional, because you're competing with both Serral and Raynor, who are both multi-world champions. So yeah, good luck with that, right? Like, you need to be incredibly good at TVZ. Clem actually won his first European regional, beating both of them. Or actually, he might have beaten Raynor twice instead of Serral as well. Doesn't really matter. It was still equally hard, at least at that point. Right now, you know, most people would consider Serral to be a level above Raynor, but back then Raynor was also extremely good. He wasn't necessarily that good against Protoss and Terran yet, especially his TVT remained a weakness for a while. Even these days, he still loses it's not an exaggerated amount, but I would say a slightly disproportionate amount to Korean Terrans. Like, if you see how good he is against someone like Hero, for example, against people like Serral and Raynor, he probably shouldn't be, you know, getting wiped by Korean Terrans that are not even at the highest level of play. Losing to Maru, for example, is completely reasonable, but he also has been getting swept by Björn and Ryung, for example, which, you know, does indicate that his TVT is still a bit of a weakness. And to be honest, that is completely understandable, because if I think about how the matchups work, I would feel like TVZ is the most speed-dependent, outplayable matchup, if that makes sense. Like, if you're really fast, if you're really good at micro, in TVZ you can make the most happen with your units. In TVP, this is already a little less, because Protoss tends to have these units that can shut things down extra hard, and you can't really out-micro them. Like, for example, if you send out 2 medevacs against Protoss and they just happen to have 10 Blink Stalkers, yeah, you know, you can try to boost your medevac a little faster. It's not really gonna work, right? Whereas Zerg doesn't really have units that are gonna punish you too hard early on. The only punish that I can think of is if you're too greedy with your Hellions and they make a lot of Zerglings early on. That could be something that's a little tough, right? Like, you could get your Hellions surrounded. But besides that, you are free to go ahead and micro as you want. And in TVT, that matchup has the least potential out of all three to really do that level of outplaying, because, you know, first of all, tanks beat literally everything on the ground. If you guys play Protoss or Zerg, right, and you think tanks are good, try playing Terran against tanks, because tanks literally just beat everything. Like, it's just insane. The only thing you can do against tanks is disable them with the Ravens. And besides that, you make air units, or you just avoid them, right? But fighting against tanks is incredibly hard. And then you have these other units like Cyclones and Ravens as well, that pretty much every Terran makes in the early game, and they shut down early harass. So TVT becomes more of a big army management, slow pushing type of game, rather than a really speed dependent, high octane outplay kind of game, right? So that's kind of what you get. I saw a mule dying there. Sorry for that mouse movement there. I saw a mule dying, but I think it was already out of juice, so that is really not that important. Let's see. But yeah, 1 worker killed, so 1 SB went down to 4 Zerglings there, which is not the worst trade ever. Now, Clem is playing Banshees. Banshees is a build that I would personally only play when I feel like I am the superior player. I know for the best Terrans in the world, this might be a little different, because if you're really good at using your Banshees, you can kind of get similar value to what Clem got out of the Ravens last game. If you guys remember that one Raven, not Ravens, but the one Raven getting 25 worker kills. If you never lose your Ravens, you can really kill a lot of stuff over time. If you never lose your Banshees, you can really kill a lot of stuff over time. This, for example, is already an amazing move by Clem. He is probably gonna kill one queen here. He might, yeah, exactly. You never know how many transfuses there are. But if Clem keeps those Banshees alive for the entire game, they're gonna get a lot of value. Most Terrans don't manage to do that, so Banshees, probably not the best choice ever. Like, for me personally, not the fastest player ever. Canceling this base is insane. Wait, that is a pretty, I'm not gonna lie, guys, that is a pretty critical mistake by Serral. He does have a lair, so he should have been able to morph an Overseer in time. He decided to go for a Link counterattack instead, but I feel like there is more than enough Marines here to deal with that. Admittedly, he is going to kill a couple workers, I believe. I only killed one there, one additional one, so that really was not the best move by Serral. You know, I don't want to be too critical of the literal best player of all time here, but that was an unnecessary fourth base cancel, slight lapse in micro by Clem as well, losing that one Banshee. So both players making, yeah, I would say Clem made a small mistake there. Serral made a slightly more than small mistake, but in the end, he has the other fourth base going up already. Actually, no, that mistake was even bigger than I thought. Normally what Zerg players do, or not normally, but it's something you see a lot, is that they take the fourth and the fifth at the same time. So if they have to give one of them up, they have the other. But here the fourth base was very significantly delayed. And I mean, on one hand, you always want to give credit to Clem. Like, playing against Clem as a Zerg is just so freaking hard. And I say as a Zerg in particular. I also think it's hard, you know, as the other two races. But as a Zerg, I think is the most difficult because Clem has the most non-stop pressure out of anyone. And Zerg is a very macro-heavy race. So you're going to have to, you know, be on top of your macro at all times when there is a freaking speed demon attacking you literally non-stop. But still, I feel like that fourth base probably should have been saved there. Serral setting up for a... Oh, that is a really good... That is such a cool move by Serral, guys. You saw that 3 Banelings making all the difference there. Those Hellions with SCVs would have been able to take care of the Lynx, but the 3 Banelings coming in from the other side, making that a very successful counterattack. But even now, guys, Serral, you know, struggling to get the fourth base online is a pretty tough situation for him. He does manage to get the other fourth base online now, and this is also going to be a... I would say a decent counterattack. I'm not quite sure. If you look at the right side of the screen, guys, you'll realize what was going on there. Those 1-1 upgrades finished right after that attack. So that is another mistake by Serral. And I do feel, you know, bad being this critical of someone who is this freaking good. But yeah, we have to be honest, guys. Those are some mistakes that Serral's making that you don't really want to be making against Clem. But still, he did manage to kill 12 workers. He's going to go in with the queens first. This is a really annoying spot with the tanks. Notice the micro on the Banelings by Serral to pull them back, just as the tanks were focus firing them. But is he going to focus fire those Banelings? This is Clem. Clem focus fires every single Baneling. He is not going to get those Banelings, however, and that is probably because he was being attacked at the same time. I think both me and the Observer, I'm using the Observer of the actual tournament, by the way. If you want to complain about the observing, don't message me. It's not like it's my YouTube video or anything. Just, you know, send them a complaint email. But I think both me and the Observer missed a counterattack there because that was where Clem's attention was. If you're wondering why Clem did not target that Baneling perfectly, because he would have if he was looking, is because Serral did another counterattack that killed another 10 workers or so. And by now, Serral's up to 30 workers killed already. I do wonder how this game would have looked if it wasn't for that first fourth base cancel. This base was not the biggest deal ever because the other fourth base was up already, but the first fourth base cancel really made it tough for Serral to keep up. And this is something that Clem... this is one Marine in the medevac and he's still being annoying as heck. You know, this is the kind of stuff that Clem does, and he's already attacking in the top right side at the same time. I was looking at the minimap. I kind of thought there would be a tank with this, but it doesn't look like there is going to be a tank present. Okay, he does have 2 tanks left. Okay, this is something that I can copy. I see 1 tank is a bit further in the back there, I believe. Let's look at that. Oh, no, there's also no tank here. Oh, this is a Widowmine, I guess. Or is it the medevac? No, it's the medevac. Widowmines are not that big on the minimap, though they did make the medevac size a little bigger. I thought that he would bring at least 1 or 2 tanks with him. because the position here is so good, right? Like, look at the position over here. One tank can be here, one tank on the top, and that would be very painful. Really good engagement with Serral. At the same time, Clem did manage to deal with a run-by while losing pretty much no workers. It's kind of tough to, you know, shout out to the observer for observing this stuff, because it's very hard to observe people that are literally just doing 8 things at the same time. Like, you know, very often what you see is people set up a double prone. So they'll shift click a bunch of medevacs or something on the left side and they attack on the right, and then you can kind of see it coming. But these guys tend to literally do it at the same time, so then as an observer you actually have to choose what to look at, because you don't want to confuse the players or the viewers and be like, oh my god, look at this and this and this. Like, that gets a little tough to watch, right? So well, yeah, it's shout out to the observer. It must be hard work observing these guys the entire day. Well done. Now if you look at the creep, guys, this is actually freaking magnificent by Clem. You know, for fun, honestly, I should play a TVZ against... I should play some games against Serral, right? And we should just compare, like, the stats of the game. Like, see how... If the creep looks like this at 11 minutes... I feel like I would have played my freaking best game ever. Like, he's playing against the best player of all time here, guys. And the creep is... It hasn't even left his base yet. This is the furthest... Look at this creep. The creep there is the furthest it has been. It's like 2 tubers next to his gas. Like, that's painful for a Zerg. It's really painful. Zerg is really, really strong when creep is everywhere. They get vision on all your units. It's way easier for them to make decisions on where to send their units, where to split their units. Their units get more speed, and it just becomes an infinitely easier game for them to play and an infinitely harder game for you to play as the Terran. Here, pretty good fight by Serral there. He didn't even have that many banelings, but for some reason he made the perfect choice to jump on that army because he did snipe 3 medevacs. Now, there are no real upgrades on the Hydras yet. He had the +2 armor, which is admittedly quite nice against the Marines, but he doesn't have the attack upgrades yet, which is going to make this a little harder. Clem obviously splitting there at the same time to take a, you know, decent trade against 3 banelings over there. And he's going to be dropping in the little nuke again over here. Like, this... If you watch Clem play Terran, it always looks so fun. Widowmine was ready here for the banelings, but not... Oh, dude. I thought Serral made a mistake there by accidentally blowing them up, but it was the freaking tank. That is the tank that he left behind. Look at that, guys. That tank was freaking genius up there. Let me show it to you guys once this fight is over. If it's ever going to end. I know these guys, okay, they're backing off right now. This freaking tank saved him from losing all of those. What a freaking genius tank. Now, I'm not planning to ever return to, like, super high-level pro play, but... I mean, if you ever want to have the perfect setup for a TVZ, you just have to look at Clem. I mean, he did take some damage from run-bys. Really well set up run-bys by Serral, admittedly. Even Serral... Do you guys realize Serral came from 2 angles in a freaking run-by? You know how a lot of players, they just fight with 1 angle in a big fight? Like this, for example, this is not the fight you usually want to take here. There's not, you just wanted to grab the tank there, but you never want to come from 1 angle, so people always recommend you come from a flank, but it's so hard to set up. Serral didn't just flank the main army, he flanked a run-by. Like, that's actually freaking crazy. So Clem did take a little bit of damage from that, but besides that, his setup has just been absolutely magnificent. Now, we are going to be getting into lurker tech here, which is when this gets a lot harder. I'm kind of learning from Clem at the same time as I'm analyzing this for you guys, because I was always so curious how the proper transition to the late game really looks. Like, sometimes you just make a bunch of ghosts, and it's like, well... Now I just have a bunch of ghosts. It's not that great. That was a little bit of a lapse in attention there from Clem, and he is going to lose a couple of units. He did manage to save most of them, including all of the ghosts, I believe, which is obviously the most important part. Really good micro by Serral there, cleaning up those widow mines. Notice that Clem, even there, he very quickly targeted a Viper, and that's why the Viper had to fly away and wasn't able to get an abduct off. But as I was gonna say, there's so much action and my thoughts keep getting disturbed. Can these guys just chill down for a bit so I can actually deliver some proper, insightful commentary? But Clem really does have the perfect setup down, including the transition to the late game, and that's where you should be copying. Like here, I think he went for just a second starport, right? Yeah, so he went for the Ghost. He did not go above 8 barracks yet, so I believe it was 5 barracks, 2 factories. Then he added 3 more barracks, and then eventually after the Ghost he adds a second starport, and he even added that before the fusion. I didn't realize that, but he even added it before the fusion core, so he's already starting to produce liberators before the fusion core, which is not something I would have guessed. Now notice how freaking good the center towers are, by the way. I've coached a lot of diamond level players in my time, and this is one of those fights that you take against lurkers where you're like, they're alone, I got them, and they're like, oh, they're They're actually even better than I thought. Yeah, lurkers are quite good. Good parasitic bomb there. I think he parasitic bombed because he wasn't paying 100% attention there. If he saw which medevac picked off the units, I think he would have abducted that medevac instead. Now notice how Serral has made a little bit of a comeback, right? Or at least it looks like it. Really good fungo there in the units as well. That Widowmine might hurt. Pretty decent shot on the Widowmine there, killing about 12 Zerglings. But Serral definitely making a little bit of a comeback, and that shows that even with Clem playing like an absolute demigod here, right? No creep spread, doing so much damage, denying the fourth base, I think even twice. Or one of them was technically the fifth base, I suppose, but you guys know what I mean. Basically denied the fourth base twice. Serral still finds himself into a pretty decent spot. Now, I would say that there really is not enough creep to be calling this a decent spot. And notice how, because of the earlier trades, there are not that many queens online. So Serral, if we look at the front, we're probably not going to see any queens. There's one queen walking over here. There are no queens on the edge of creep besides that one. So Serral does not even have the potential to respread the creep right now. Now, he's going to go for a Nidus, which is a play that I really, really like to see. Niduses are one of the reasons why, if you're not 100% well-versed at a late game against Zerg, you might not want to, you know, play it too much, because it could be very frustrating. Look at that amazing infestor movement just around the edge of that scan. Just so you guys know, because that is something that gets confused a lot, a sensor tower does not detect, okay? So the fact that the infestors are in the sensor tower, it doesn't mean that Clem actually sees them. Like, he needs to be in range of the turret. I do think he did walk in range of that turret slightly, and that is why he's going to go for that EMP. What's actually very scary for Terran is that you cannot really snipe the infestor in that scenario. You have to EMP, because snipe doesn't go off fast enough. You can literally unburrow the infestor and fungal the ghost, and if you fungal the ghost, you're gonna kill 10 of them with Balings, and that is an absolutely massive trade. Like, if you look at Clem's money right now, he can build 6 ghosts, right? So if he loses 10, obviously a very, very massive deal. But I feel like Serral's having such a tough time because of the lack of creep. Like, notice how his army is always coming in very slow, and it's really not been that hard for Clem to run away. Like, it's not necessarily that Serral and Clem oh, that sounds like a scary Archon. It's not necessarily that Serral has been taking bad fights, but it just has been easy for Clem to avoid the disastrous fights. And disastrous fights are really what Zerg wants to cause. Like, if you look at the economy right now, let me just, before I continue here, let me explain the basic economic fundamentals of TVZ. Terran always trades more efficient, even if it's by a little bit, right? Like, here you can see Clem has traded... Oh, that's a really painful fungal there, but there's not enough units from Serral. Clem has traded about 5,000 resources more efficient, and usually it's about 30-40% that Terran trades better than the Zerg. So you want to make sure that you're up in bases. If Clem can take his bases for free, even slowly, the Terran is going to be ahead from this. A little bit of mismovement from the Vipers there. I think the Vipers were combined in Hotkey with the Infestor somehow, or it was a very unfortunate rally, because those Vipers did rally into their death. Now, Serral has a lot of money, and this is what actually blew my mind. You guys realize what happened here? Clem has been putting so much pressure on Serral that Serral, of all players, didn't inject properly. Like, he did have 5 queens. I know we've been talking about how he doesn't have that many queens, but he did have 5 for 6 hatcheries that he had. He didn't have larva. He had so much money in that moment. He had 2k, but he was so flustered by Clem's attacks that he didn't inject enough. And that is absolutely freaking mind-blowing to me. If you can pressure Serral, of all players, so hard, one of the most composed players ever, you know, the most successful tournament player of all time, one of the absolute fastest Zergs, maybe second behind Rainer, who's an absolute speed demon. If you can make him miss his injects, like, it's just, you know, you're just freaking insane. There's absolutely no words for that. Serral has been doing a really good job with the micro. He's been taking the fights as well as he can, but Clem is just taking him a little better. He's going to try to find Indies liberated. This fight actually seems pretty decent for Serral, as long as he does have enough hiders to take care of the libs. Libs are quite expensive, and this fight was actually very good for Serral. Clem just having a little too many units there. And once again, guys, now there's not even creep here. There's not even any creep on this low ground. That is so freaky. Like, this must be an absolute nightmare for Zerg. Like, before, there was creep in his base. But then Clem killed one of his bases and killed the creep there. So now Serral's trying to retake that base, but now it's a base without creep. Once again, guys, Serral, so good with the fights. I think there's a lot of Zerg players watching this that probably thought Serral was dead like 10 times already, and somehow he keeps taking fights that are so good with a theoretically inferior army that actually pulls him back in the game. That is fantastic. Now, if we look at the economic situation here, remember that I mentioned that Zerg wants to be up a base. Right now, Serral is I believe, down one base. Well, the left base is getting mining, which is going to put them even on bases again, but that's just not where you want to be against the Terran. The units lost is now 7,500 resources different, which is... I don't know. To me, that sounds like an entire base, but I could be wrong there. They did change the minerals at some point, where some minerals have a lot of minerals and some don't. I don't quite remember exactly how many resources one base has, but it's bad. Like here, there's a Fungon going to come in, but there's just not enough units here. There's a lot of Liberators, a lot of Ghosts, and Clem takes the game against Serral. And this, guys, if you guys didn't see this finals, this was game number 2, and Clem ended up winning this series 5-0. That's right. This was an absolutely momentous, legendary occasion. Before you guys leave, let me give you guys one more fact. Serral had not lost a best of 7 plus in 5 years. Let that sink in for a second. Serral had not lost a best of 7 plus in 5 years, and Clem 5-0'd him in a best of 9 in the biggest finals of all time. Clem won the $400,000 prize, plus getting the 50K prize for MVP, winning $450,000, sorry, in one try. It would be kind of tough if the grand finals, the biggest one ever, would give $450. But he won almost $500,000 by 5-0ing Serral. That is probably the coolest thing, the most amazing thing a StarCraft player was ever able to put on their resume. And that is how Clem won the biggest StarCraft event of all time. In the end, it was a very one-sided final. Serral didn't really manage to do anything against Clem, which is freaking brutal. Clem going 9-0, 4-0 hero as well before. And that's going to be it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed this little recap of how freaking amazing Clem is, really the biggest tournament of all time. If you did, give a video a like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see y'all for the next one. Adios.